Right now on Morning News Now, feeling hot, hot, hot. It has been 3 straight days of historic heat globally. This morning, millions of Americans are bracing for more triple-digit temperatures for what's already the Earth's hottest week ever.
The air quality is really hard on my lungs. And then with the heat on top, it's like having a meltdown all in one.
Plus, a severe storm system slowly moving east, threatening several states with heavy rain, destructive winds, and tornadoes. We'll have your latest forecast. Who done it? That's the question this morning at the White House, where we're learning new information about that bag of cocaine discovered this week. But officials are now saying about exactly where it was found and why it's raising new questions about the investigation. Plus, a major breakthrough for families touched by Alzheimer's disease. This morning, a new drug said to slow the progression of the disease now has full approval by the FDA. More on the move that could change the lives of millions of Americans. And hashtag Your Big Day, a new kind of wedding vendor now in high demand. Content creators are being hired to document everything from the first look to the first dance and everything in between. We're going to talk about this trend and why some couples say it's worth it. Good morning, I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is on assignment on this Friday. We begin with that record-breaking heat, which is being felt all across the globe. Yesterday, we literally experienced what could have been the hottest day on Earth. Our planet hit an unofficial record high average 63 degrees. It is the 3rd time we broke that record this week. Many parts of the globe have been dealing with this blistering heat wave for weeks, from the Canadian province of Quebec to the South American country Peru, both of which hit high temperature records this week. And folks in China are also dealing with a string of heat waves. Just yesterday, weather forecasters issued heat advisories as temperatures there soared past 104 degrees for another day. Here in the U.S., cities from coast to coast are trying to beat the extreme temperatures. Heat alerts are in effect for parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas today. But it's not just southern states. The Northeast is also dealing with above-average highs in the 90s. Scientists say this is a sweaty sign of what's to come.
It is warming, and it's the warmest we've ever seen. But also, if you continue on that trajectory, it becomes the coolest years, cool summers that we will experience for the next couple of years.
The heat is also turning deadly. Triple-digit temperatures possibly proved fatal in Death Valley National Park, where a 65-year-old man died in his vehicle without AC. A 57-year-old woman died while hiking in the Grand Canyon. And in South Florida, an 18-month-old toddler died after the child was left in a hot car. We are tracking this dangerous heat all morning. Let's start off with meteorologist Angie Lastman for the latest on these sweltering temps. Angie, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. I wish I had some better news for you when it comes to the Southwest, especially considering it's been days and days of these really uncomfortable and dangerous temperatures. And we've got another day of it. Triple digits expected for Phoenix this afternoon. 111 degrees is where we're headed. That goes for Tucson, too. Tucson and El Paso are 2 spots that we could tie a record high today, both at 107 for El Paso and 111 for Tucson. Elsewhere, Roswell, we're still in the triple digits, and we go into parts of Texas, and we're going to be in the high 90s. That means feels like temperatures will be even higher than that. And if you're looking for a break from the heat in the Southwest, unfortunately, it really doesn't show up all that soon. We're going to continue to be into the triple digits. Look where we are in Phoenix through the next Saturday, Sunday, Monday timeframe, 112 each day. And again, this is something that we'll deal with for much of that area through at least the beginning part of our next work week. Now, when we move to the Northeast, temperatures are above normal, too. We're starting off July with some really warm conditions. Places like New York today headed to 86, not all that bad for this time of year, but the heat index will be around the low 90s this afternoon. Boston, similar story there. We'll see mid-90s for what it feels like this afternoon in Washington, D.C., and even warmer than that in Richmond, as it'll feel like 97 degrees. Along the Gulf Coast, even warmer than that. We see the triple-digit feels like temperatures for places like New Orleans this afternoon. Panama City heads to 103 for the heat index this afternoon during that warmest part of the day. You're going to want to find AC if you can. Shade is always great. We'll also be needing to follow those same kind of precautions here when it comes to hydrating and staying cool through the afternoon hours especially. This will stretch over the next couple of days too. Parts of the Northeast will kind of start to cool down just a touch. We'll have some rain work in for the weekend that'll help us out just a little bit. And speaking of the rain, there's your satellite and radar picture. You can see it's kind of unsettled along the Gulf Coast this morning. We also have some of these stronger storms that have even prompted a thunderstorm watch for parts of Oklahoma this morning. And And that's the spot really through the central and high plains that we're going to watch for the greatest chance to see some of those stronger storms through the day today, into the afternoon hours and into the evening hours. There's the system that is going to be responsible for it. It'll continue tracking to the east for tomorrow, and it'll bring another chance for some strong storms. So let's talk about those locations for the strongest of the storms. 8 million at risk. It does include places like Denver this afternoon, Oklahoma City and Amarillo. Same kind of hazards: hail, strong winds, isolated tornado. As you're getting out the door for your afternoon plans on your Saturday, Oklahoma City going to be another place that we'll once again watch for some strong storms. That does extend into Little Rock. Places like Nashville could see some strong storms as well. And as we look ahead into Sunday, we start to get parts of the southeast and the mid-Atlantic in on this action, and we'll have 46 million people wrapping up their weekend with the chance for some strong storms. So a weekend that you're going to want to make sure you have at least a plan B for any outdoor activities. Maybe something indoors would be a better fit, because we'll also have the heavy rain on top of that, Joe, and that's going to bring the potential for some flooding. So it's, you know, do you want the warmth and the dangerous temperatures, or do you want the flooding and the strong storms?
Exactly. We welcome the rain to cool things down. We just hope it's not too severe.
Exactly.
All right, Angie, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Let's talk now with Professor Lewis Halsey. He is a professor at the University of Roehampton, London. Professor, good to have you with us. So we're talking with you because you shared findings yesterday from a study that focused on heat and heart activity. Now, before we get to your results, can you tell us a little bit about these experiments you ran and how they worked?
Sure, yeah, hello. So quite simple premise, really. We had participants lying down, resting, staying still in a nice controlled kind of temperature of maybe 26 degrees. They're not wearing too much, just enough for their modesty. Measures their activity. We put them in a very high temperature, so 40 degrees C, 50 degrees C, also quite high humidity, and we measured their physiology. We measured their metabolic rate, we measured their body temperatures, and we're making comparisons between that control condition and the very hot conditions, the sort of conditions that sometimes you're seeing in some parts of the US during the summer.
And I think some of the temps you mentioned were in Celsius for the benefit of much of our audience. We'll talk about hitting 104 to 122 degrees Fahrenheit. So in your findings, what happens to our bodies when they hit temps in this range? And why does heat have such a huge, even sometimes deadly impact on our bodies?
Yeah, right. So when our bodies are in ambient temperature, so the surrounding environment of over 100 Fahrenheit, particularly when the air is quite wet, quite humid, the problem is our bodies are taking on heat. They're not getting rid of heat, they're taking on heat. And if it's a humid environment as well, then our sweating doesn't work. You know, human beings are really, really good at sweating. Sometimes we don't like to admit that, but in the animal kingdom, we're brilliant at sweating. But that superpower, the kryptonite to that superpower, is high humidity levels. When it's hot and humid, our bodies just can't dump the heat, which means we just steadily heat up. It's almost like we're cooking. Now, one of the problems that can happen is that if our bodies get hot enough, nerve functioning starts to falter. And if nerve functioning falters to the heart, and that's quite an extreme scenario, but it can happen, the heart stops working effectively, lower oxygen levels in the body, particularly to the brain, and that can be the end of us.
Professor, we know older adults and newborns are more vulnerable to heat. Whenever we have these heat waves, we talk about the importance of protecting seniors, protecting kids. But that is not all. What other groups are at higher risk?
Well, yeah, no, you're right. It's important to reiterate that. Very young children who don't control their body temperatures so well, and also can't alert adults to changes in their body temperature, and older people are the most at risk. It's possible that, well, we see some differences. We're seeing some differences in the way that the heart responds to being at high temperatures between the two sexes, so between males and females. I stress that we can't say at this stage whether those differences relate to different capacities in the heat, though they might do. But the fact that we're seeing these differences means that there's more to look for, and we need to be understanding better who is at risk, individuals who are at risk and who aren't at risk when those heat waves hit. But I'll say this, everyone's at more risk of a heat wave if you go from one day, let's say 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and the next day it's 110. If you get a tapering up of temperature through the spring, everybody adapts to some degree. Human beings are very good at adapting to the heat up to a point. If you get that sudden change in temperature, though, then that's when we're more at risk.
Such important research, especially topical right now. Professor Lewis Halsey, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Pleasure.
For days now, we have been covering a mystery at the White House, a West Wing whodunit. Well, now we're learning it's possible we may never get an answer. We're talking about that bag of cocaine that was found in the White House earlier this week. Multiple officials now say it was actually discovered in a cubby near the White House West executive entrance, not the formal West Wing lobby as previously reported. For the latest, we're joined by NBC News White House correspondent Ali Rafa. Ali, good morning. So White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre called the original location a heavily traveled area. Does this new location change that? What do we know about this area?
Yeah, Joe, we got some more clarity from sources familiar with this investigation on where exactly this baggie was found, but the pool of people who still had access to this new location is still pretty wide. And just to set some context here, there are two entrances to the West Wing. There's one that may look familiar to our viewers. You see sometimes lawmakers stop in front of a set of microphones that are trained in front of that entrance at all times after having meetings with the president in the Oval Office. Members of the press walk by this entrance multiple times a day. And then there's a separate entrance that's a floor below, that's under the main lobby. And that's where these sources are saying that this cubby was located, that this baggie was found. These are both heavily trafficked areas by White House staffers, by members of the public that are having these private tours of the West Wing from these White House staffers. At this point, we don't know. There's no indication that one of these guests was the one who did leave this baggie. But we do know that throughout the weekend, those public tours did continue to go on, Joe.
So, I mean, let's talk about the investigation. Officials familiar with it now say the inquiry, it could be wrapped up by Monday. Just days ago, investigators said it could take weeks. What changed? Does this new location at all help narrow down who may have left this bag there?
So at this point, we know investigators are combing through what they have at their disposal. We know that they're doing some more testing on that baggie. They're testing it for DNA, for fingerprints. They're combing through visitor logs of staffers, of members of the public who were on those tours. They're also looking through surveillance footage. But they're cautioning that even with all of these resources, there's still a very good chance they may not find who actually did this, because this baggie is so small. Remember, they've compared it to the size of a dime, that they say because of this surveillance footage, it's quite possible it won't be detected on that. So they're tamping down expectations, but regardless, going through all of this and with the progress they've made so far, they say that whereas this was originally expected to take weeks, this could be wrapped up by Monday, Joe.
All right, so here's what we do know. This is weird. This is really unusual. Obviously, you never thought you'd be talking about this all week. It's prompting a lot of questions. Is the Secret Service reviewing any security protocol as a result? Does this make them say, hey, we need to do something differently here?
Yeah, this is definitely unprecedented, and members of the White House press corps definitely did not expect to be talking about this week. But at this point, we don't have any indication that this is going to lead to some internal review of Secret Service security protocol, because at this point, we know that this baggie was found during a regular measure of their already established protocol. This was found during a regular routine surveillance of the West Wing on Sunday. And so based on what we know of their security measures so far, it's unclear whether any sort of extra measures would have been able to detect this baggie. We know that White House staffers are repeatedly and regularly drug tested if need be. Anyone entering the West Wing or the White House grounds, for that matter, is subject to metal detectors, similar to an airport, things that would detect any sort of potential weapons, but not necessarily illegal substances. So it's unclear whether this will lead to any sort of changes on that part.
Ali Rafa, proving the White House beat covers a wide range of topics. Ali, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Turning now to a major breakthrough for people suffering from Alzheimer's disease. The FDA has now given full approval for a new drug. It's called Leqembi and is said to slow down the progression of the disease by up to 27%. But the drug does come with some controversy, including a hefty price tag and some serious side effects. NBC News Now anchor Kate Snow takes a closer look at why the medical community is still calling this a huge step forward.
It's the first time a drug meant to slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease has ever been granted full regulatory approval. In a clinical trial involving about 1,800 patients in the early stages of Alzheimer's, the drug Leqembi slowed cognitive decline by 27% over an 18-month period compared to people who took a placebo.
I really cannot overstate how important today is. This is really a game changer for our field.
The drug targets a type of protein in the brain thought to be one of the leading causes of Alzheimer's. John Domek was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's at 56. He joined a trial at the Cleveland Clinic, receiving infusions every other week. In the beginning, he and his wife Anne weren't told if it was Leqembi or a placebo, but for the past year, he's been on Leqembi.
I've been on it for a while, and I think it's helped me.
His cognitive function has declined slightly, they say, but not by much.
We get that it's not a cure, but there was nothing when we got our diagnosis, nothing. Now there's something that we can do.
It gives you hope.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah, unbelievably. I mean, we had none.
Since John is still in a trial, they're not paying for Leqembi, but the list price is $26,500 a year. Medicare plans to provide coverage as long as a doctor agrees to submit patient data. There are side effects. Trials found a greater risk of brain swelling and brain bleeds for patients on Leqembi, leaving some doctors with concerns.
The risk and benefits are quite disproportionate in favor of risk, and therefore this is not a therapy that patients should really consider taking.
For the Domeks, though,
it was go with a drug that might work or nothing. What would you do?
They're traveling to London in August.
Alzheimer's threw us for a loop. This drug has thrown us a lifeline.
Kate Snow, NBC News, New York.
Let's take a closer look at this new drug with NBC News senior medical correspondent Dr. John Torres. So let's talk about some of the basics here first. How often would patients need to take Leqembi, and are there benefits that are there signs the benefits could increase as time goes on?
So the brand name is Leqembi. The scientific name, the generic name is lecanemab. That MAB at the end means monoclonal antibody. So it's a monoclonal antibody. Think of the same type of things they had during the pandemic if you had COVID, and you can get that as well. It's an IV infusion, and it essentially works with the immune system to help get rid of those plaques, and like they mentioned here in the package, bring that cognition decline down a little bit. And so the main thing is you have to go in every 2 weeks to get this IV treatment, and it's an IV infusion, probably takes about an hour. So the whole trip, 2 to 3 hour kind of trip. Some of these patients don't drive, aren't able to drive, don't have transportation. Every 2 weeks could be a little cumbersome from them. And so that's one of the controversies behind it. And they're looking now at other ways of administering it, potentially ways with injectable pens that you could use at home. And so we'll see where that goes as far as, where the future of this is going to go, and is it going to improve over time. This drug, like was mentioned in the package, is a bit controversial because some experts are saying, the risks aren't worth the benefits. The benefits are so modest that we still need to push forward. But if you look at the progression of the different medicines, this is the one that has shown some benefit at all. And for families, that is a lot of hope.
Yeah, I mean, so despite those risks, do we expect to see a surge in prescriptions for this? I mean, we heard that family there say that they didn't have any hope now, so why not give this a shot?
And I think you're going to see a big surge in prescriptions. You mentioned that 27% decline in the rate of cognition decline. And so in other words, it's not stopping your rate of decline, it's not reversing it, but it's slowing down that rate of decline. And it's the equivalent to giving people 5 extra months of having that ability to know who their families are, being able to talk to people, having memories, being able to do things on your own. And so for families, that is extremely important. For researchers looking at it and scientists looking at it and politicians, everyone else, they're saying, from the outside, it looks like that benefit's modest. For somebody on the inside, that benefit could mean a whole lot of things.
Time is everything
Exactly.
for so many people. I mean, the medicine's meant for people who are in the early stages. Just taking a step back, big picture, is this giving us hope that we are one step closer to a cure?
It's actually giving us a lot of hope, because if you look at the progressions of the medicines that have come along, they have increased every time to give us, one, getting rid of those amyloid plaques that we know contribute to it, aren't the only cause, but we know contribute to it. And at this point now we get rid of the plaques and improve cognition. There's some others coming down the line, look like they might even be a little bit better. And that's pointing in a direction of getting to that point of a cure. On top of that, the fact that we're having these, that the FDA is approving them and families are using them and getting some success with them, encourages researchers to go out there and really strive to find that cure, that holy grail of Alzheimer's, of ending it, basically.
That's what we're all hoping for. All right, Dr. John Torres, thank you so much.
You
Appreciate having you on with this. There's much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, Britney Spears speaking out about a confrontation involving the NBA's hottest new player, what both sides had to say about an apparent incident with a security guard. Up first, after the break, operations suspended. New developments following the tragic implosion of that Titanic tourist submersible. We'll be right back. OceanGate says it has suspended all operations following the implosion last month of its Titan submersible in the Atlantic Ocean. Officials believe the Titan suffered a catastrophic implosion on June 18th while on a trip to tour the Titanic shipwreck. All 5 people on board were killed. The cause of the tragedy is still unknown. The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating and plans to issue safety recommendations to prevent a similar tragedy. The shockwaves are still reverberating after last month's unprecedented aborted mutiny by the Russian mercenary Wagner Group. Tonight, NBC's chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel is taking an in-depth look at that brief rebellion, which stunned the Kremlin and the world. Here's a preview.
Much remains unclear about what happened when Yevgeny Prigozhin launched his mutiny, how much was pre-planned and what will happen next. But the uprising undeniably exposed cracks in Putin's grip on power. And for a leader like Putin, showing weakness can be dangerous. Russia may look like a state. Those who know it well say under President Vladimir Putin, it's become a mafia, armed with nuclear weapons.
Putin is the dictator, but he's probably more likely capo di tutti capi, the boss of bosses.
And on June 24th, Putin faced the biggest challenge to his authority in his more than 2 decades in power. A member of his trusted inner circle dared to revolt and marched his army of mercenaries into Russia. Yevgeny Prigozhin had reason to be angry. He had raised a private army called the Wagner Group and sent them to fight Putin's war in Ukraine. His men were being slaughtered, and Prigozhin blamed Russia's armchair generals running the war of sabotage.
Это чьи-то, отцы и чьи-то сыновья. Они пришли сюда добровольцами и умирают за то, чтобы вы жировали в своих кабинетах с красным деревом. Учтите это!
There was a mutiny against Vladimir Putin's armed forces.
It's more like a fight between various gangs, which is typical for a mafia state.
Vladimir Putin was rattled and seemed to be caught off guard. He had raised Prigozhin and empowered him.
Prigozhin is entirely a creature of Vladimir Putin. He does not exist without Putin. This is a Frankenstein-like scenario.
I've been following Prigozhin's extraordinary rise for years and seen firsthand how the one-time petty thief built a criminal empire in Syria, Africa, Russia, and Ukraine, making him powerful enough to challenge the boss.
It's like a thriller, so we know that there's more to come. It's to be continued.
It seems President Putin underestimated Prigozhin, failing to appreciate how powerful and how angry his underling had become.
Our thanks to Richard for that. Make sure to tune into MSNBC or Peacock tonight to watch On Assignment, Revolt from Within, The Rise of Wagner. That's at 11 p.m. Eastern. Today marks 100 days since Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich was detained in Russia. Gershkovich was arrested back in March on charges of espionage, which he, the U.S., and the Wall Street Journal all strongly deny. This morning, the paper is once again calling for his release days after it emerged that Moscow said it might be open to a prisoner swap. More international news now. Another round of military aid is said to be heading to Ukraine from America. NBC News foreign correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us from Rome with that and other world headlines. Claudio, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. That's right. According to the Associated Press, the Biden administration today is expected to announce a military aid package. Now, the package reportedly includes thousands of cluster munitions worth up to $800 million. These bombs are controversial due to their potential to cause civilian deaths, but the Pentagon is hopeful that including less unexploded rounds will help reduce that risk. Well, the weapons provided in the package include a selection of rounds of ammunition, Bradley and Stryker armed vehicles, and high-mobility artillery rocket systems. Now to London, where a car crashed into an elementary school, killing at least one child and injuring several others in the Wimbledon area. Police said the driver was arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. London's mayor, Sadiq Khan, released a statement saying his heart goes out to everyone affected in the absolutely devastating collision. An investigation is underway into what caused the deadly accident. Now, finally, good news out of the Amazon. The Brazilian government says that this deforestation of Brazil's Amazon was down by more than 33%. The decrease comes in the first 6 months of President Lula da Silva's term. Lula had pledged to end forest clearance by 2030, despite the rise in deforestation over the past few years. The data was presented by satellite images by Brazil's National Institute of Space Research, but it has not yet been independently verified. Back to you, Joe.
All right, some promising research. Claudio, thank you. Coming up, a missing person mystery. Police in Houston now say a man who was found 8 years after he was reported missing was actually home the whole time. What we're learning from investigators. Plus, Britney Spears demanding an apology from the NBA's hottest new star after an incident in Vegas. We're going to explain next on Morning News Now. Welcome back. Britney Spears is speaking out about the moment she says she was backhanded by the security team for the NBA's biggest recruit, Victor Wembanyama. Spears says she approached the basketball player in her Las Vegas hotel lobby Wednesday night and tried to tap him on the shoulder to get his attention. That's when a security guard for Wembanyama allegedly slapped her with enough force to knock her glasses off. Spears says the guard was not looking at her when she was hit. Wembanyama had this to say about the incident.
I didn't see what happened because I was walking straight and we told don't stop, but that person grabbed me from behind, not on my shoulder, she grabbed me from behind, and so I just know that the security pushed her away. I don't know with how much force though. I thought it was no big deal, and the security of this person was Britney Spears, so I was like, no, you're joking, but yeah, it turns out it was Britney Spears, but I didn't know because I didn't see her, I never saw her face.
So far, no arrests or citations have been issued as a result of the slap. Spears says she has not received an apology from Wembanyama or the San Antonio Spurs. A missing persons case in Texas has taken an unexpected turn. Police say a Houston mom reported her teenage son missing 8 years ago. He turned up this week, but officials now say he was never missing, that he had been home the whole time. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson has the latest.
Draped in a towel, but alive. New images of Rudy Farias as the mystery around his disappearance deepens. The 25-year-old was allegedly found last week outside a church and unresponsive, his family says, 8 years after he allegedly vanished without a trace while walking his dogs. His mother, Janie Santana, reported the then 17-year-old missing on March 7, 2015. But investigators now say he was home with her almost the entire time.
It was discovered that Rudy returned home the following day on March 8th, 2015.
The stunning revelation uncovered after police interviewed Farias.
The mother, Janie, continued to deceive police by remaining adamant that Rudy was still missing.
Santana even releasing a statement after her son was found, thanking the media and the public for their support, writing, "My son Rudy is receiving the care he needs to overcome his trauma, but at this time, he is nonverbal and not able to communicate with us." Investigators say Farias and his mom had several run-ins with police over the years, but gave fake names and birthdays so he remained a missing person. No clues as to why the mother and son would knowingly keep the lie going, but police say they do not suspect foul play.
We don't have any information to say there was any kind of kidnapping or anything like that right now.
And as for what's next, police say the investigation is still ongoing and that Santana could still be charged for giving false information in a police report.
All right, Priscilla, thank you so much. Harvard University is back in the legal hot seat. The medical school is now facing 2 lawsuits after a months-long FBI investigation uncovered a human trafficking scheme allegedly led by the school's morgue manager. Telemundo anchor Grace Gomez has more on this disturbing case.
My parents were law enforcement. My father was a deputy sheriff, and my mother was a police officer.
Paula Poltanovich says her parents, Joan and Nicholas, were known in their community for the way they helped those in need. And even after death, they wanted to donate their bodies to medical research.
They've always wanted to donate back to science to help the students to find and cure diseases.
She says she was shocked to find out someone had possibly tampered with her father's remains.
Never in my life would expect this to happen.
What do you have to say about these charges? Last month, Cedric Lodge, the former Harvard Medical School's morgue manager, was arrested. He and his wife, Denise Lodge, are facing criminal charges after an FBI investigation into the trafficking of more than 400 human remains. According to court documents from 2018 to 2022, Lodge allegedly stole body parts, brought them to his home, and sold them to buyers in other states. NBC News reached out to the Lodge's lawyer, but they didn't respond to our request for comment. According to the FBI, 6 additional people from Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Massachusetts, and Arkansas are connected and currently face charges on this case. Last week, Lodge and the other defendants pleaded not guilty in a federal court in Pennsylvania.
It is grotesque.
Last month, Paula says she received this letter from Harvard Medical School informing her dad could be one of the people whose body was tampered with. She's now filed a lawsuit against Lodge and Harvard Medical School for emotional distress.
It's shocking to me that there could be so many victims over the course of 5 years. And where was the oversight? Where were the people questioning what was happening with these bodies?
More than 300 families also filed a class action lawsuit against Harvard Medical School, citing their bodies had been unlawfully mishandled, stolen, and sold. In a statement, Harvard Medical School says in part, quote, "We are so very sorry for the pain this news will cause for our anatomical donors' families and loved ones," and adding that Lodge was terminated on May 6th and that they couldn't comment any further on any pending litigation.
And now we have to go through this ourselves all over again, wondering what part of my dad is gone. If I have dad's ashes, it's terrible.
Our thanks to Grace Gomez for that report. If convicted, those accused in the human trafficking ring could face up to 15 years in prison. Coming up, bouncing back. New data shows the job market could be recovering from the so-called Great Resignation. We'll break down the numbers. And would you trust AI to plan your next trip? A lot of travelers are. We're going to show you how it works, how well it works, next on Morning News Now. We're back now with a closer look at the jobs market. New data out yesterday showed job openings fell to a 2-year low in May. Meanwhile, the number of people that quit their jobs hit 4 million. That's a drop of around 500,000 compared with a recent high in November of 2021. Joining us now to discuss all this is Ron Insana. He's a CNBC senior analyst and senior advisor to Schroders NA. Ron, always good to have you with us. So we got these job opening numbers. We've got the quitting numbers. What do they all tell us right now about the state of the labor market?
Well, we're getting some mixed pictures here because you also got ADP's unemployment report yesterday that showed that nearly 500,000 jobs were created in the private sector. So the Labor Department still looks quite strong. There might be some softening in certain sectors of the economy. But having said that, and we'll get this morning's jobs numbers as well from the Labor Department, it appears that there's a fair amount of resiliency in the labor force right now. We've had a couple of things take place that have bolstered jobs, including the CHIPS Act, which has caused $189 billion to be sunk into the construction of advanced manufacturing facilities. So labor market still looks very good. And even with the quits rate moving a little bit around, it's a fairly volatile series. So it just looks like the economy is doing reasonably well here. In fact, far better than most people expected.
I want to ask you a little more about something you just mentioned, those ADP numbers. They showed the private payrolls, as you mentioned, jumped to nearly 500,000, 497,000 in June. That's more than double a Dow Jones estimate. Is this more proof the jobs market is resilient right now?
Oh, absolutely. And you know, look, there are a lot of things going on. And again, for some of us who have been looking for recession based on a wide variety of indicators that would suggest we're within the, you know, a few months of experiencing a slowdown of some sort, we're still getting also a fair amount of fiscal stimulus, both from the CHIPS and Science Act and from the Inflation Reduction Act, which is prompting a lot of energy companies to invest in new technologies. AI is boosting the tech sector rather unexpectedly and rather quickly, even as it was beginning to slump a little bit earlier this year. So there's a great deal of resilience built into the market and into the economy. And on top of that, Joe, we've also seen a fair amount of very little, I should say, interest rate sensitivity. People who locked in low interest mortgages or corporations that extended their debt at low rates aren't as sensitive to the rate hikes we've seen from the Fed. And so that's also having less of an impact on the economy, not slowing it down nearly as much as many of us thought it would.
So speaking of interest rates in the wake of all these numbers, what do you think the Federal Reserve is going to do? Could we see more rate hikes in the near future?
Yeah, we got hints from the Fed. They released their so-called beige book, which chronicles economic activity around the country every 6 weeks or so. That came out on Wednesday. All Federal Reserve officials are looking for another 1 or 2 rate hikes to quell inflation, which I might add is coming down rather sharply. There was a new report from the New York Federal Reserve yesterday showing an alternative measure of inflation coming down rather sharply, more than other estimates have suggested. Hopefully the Fed will take a look at that and not purposefully drive us into recession to cool what my good friend Art Cashin has been on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange since the 1960s called a Goldilocks economy. I think we're pretty close to that right now. Inflation's coming down. Growth is fine. In fact, the United States is growing faster and has lower inflation than any other major country in the world right now. So it's a pretty decent story at this juncture.
All right, Ron, good to hear from you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks.
Now to some more financial headlines. Twitter throwing some legal punches at its new competitor, Meta's Threads. CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with more on that and other money news. Silvana, good morning.
Joe, good morning to you. Yeah, so Twitter is threatening legal action against Meta over Threads. That's the new text-based app it launched this week. Now, in a letter addressed to Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, an attorney for Twitter accuses the company of stealing trade secrets and other intellectual property by hiring former employees to create a copycat app. Threads has collected tens of millions of signups since going live Wednesday night. A Meta spokesperson says no one on the Threads team is a former Twitter employee. Elon Musk and Twitter CEO Linda Yaccarino haven't publicly commented. Levi Strauss plans to cut prices as weaker consumer spending is hitting the company's bottom line. The company's CEO saying Levi's will reduce prices on half a dozen products sold through wholesale channels such as retailers Macy's and Nordstrom to try to boost sales among more price-sensitive shoppers. Chip Berg says the company is competing for dollars from consumers' wallets and that moderate-income shopper is having to make some tough choices. Taylor Swift and FTX are never, ever getting back together. Reports say the megastar had signed a deal with the now-failed cryptocurrency exchange to be a celebrity endorser to the tune of $100 million. The deal also would have had FTX be a sponsor of her sold-out Eras tour. That's contrary to previous reporting. Swift backed out of talks because she was worried FTX could fail amid concerns it sold unregistered securities. FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried was reportedly the one who walked away from the deal, Joe.
Well, if it is a breakup, we know we'll hear about it in a song.
We
right,
will.
Silvana?
Oh, yeah. Can't wait.
All right. Thanks so much.
You got it.
We've been reporting on the many ways people are using AI to perform tasks in their everyday lives. So could it help improve your travel planning experience? Well, NBC News senior consumer investigative correspondent, News Now anchor Vicki Nguyen, gave it a try.
Whether you're looking for a beach getaway, a camping trip in the mountains, or an exciting excursion overseas, deciding where to go and how to get the best deals is now a whole lot easier thanks to the magic of AI technology. Instead of wading through endless Google searches, sites like ChatGPT allow you to type in the type of trip you're looking for and, in just seconds, receive detailed and personalized itineraries.
ChatGPT and generative AI tools are going to be a big change, similar to really when internet arrived in the 90s.
So here's how it works. Just go to an AI site like Google's Bard or ChatGPT. Create an account. It's free. Then type in your criteria for a vacation. What are you looking for? The more specific, the better. I've typed in, what are family-friendly vacations within 300 miles of New York City? I'll be traveling with my husband and 3 daughters, ages 14, 11, and 7. Voila. Here's a whole list of places to go. The top 3, Cape May, New Jersey, Mystic, Connecticut, and Hershey, Pennsylvania. AI's efficiency is proving to be a big draw with travelers. One study found nearly a third are likely to use ChatGPT to book their next vacation. On a scale of 1 to 10, how helpful was AI in planning your trip?
10, easily. I spent hours doing it, Google searching everything, and ChatGPT, it's like talking with like a friend that's super knowledgeable about things.
Celia Quillian booked her last vacation using ChatGPT, the site suggesting Puerto Rico as the perfect destination. What did you actually type into ChatGPT?
I would like to travel somewhere that I can access with a U.S. passport. I want it to be temperate. I'm going with my husband, so I want there to be opportunities for excursions in nature, for some romance, for good food.
ChatGPT even gave her a 7-day itinerary, complete with a spreadsheet of activities broken down by distance and cost.
Look at that. In like 5 minutes, it gave me so many recommendations.
Major travel apps are also using AI to improve the customer experience. Expedia launching a ChatGPT-powered travel planner in its app that recommends trips for users. But AI isn't perfect. Information on the free ChatGPT site can be outdated. It's only pulling from data as recent as September 2021, so it can't give you current prices. And some hotels and restaurants, it suggests, may have gone out of business.
ChatGPT sometimes invent information or really comes up with stuff that doesn't exist or is wrong.
For $20 a month, you can upgrade to a subscription that has current info and pricing. But experts say if you think AI spells the end of the human travel agent, think again.
Travel advisors can be a customer service representative for you if anything goes wrong. And more importantly, they're providing their firsthand knowledge and experience.
Our thanks to Vicki Wynn for that report. Coming up, they call themselves Sisters of the Skies. After the break, we'll introduce you to a group of trailblazing pilots, how they're working to change the future of flying. Plus, wedding officiant? Check. Reception flowers? Check. What about a content creator? We're going to talk about a new kind of wedding vendor now in high demand. Welcome back. Basketball icon Kobe Bryant is set to be featured on the cover of the video game NBA 2K24. Bryant will be on 2 editions of the game, the Kobe Bryant edition and the Black Mamba edition. The Kobe Bryant one will spotlight the basketball star leaping through the air in his number 8 jersey, while the Black Mamba edition will showcase Bryant in his number 24 uniform. It's going to be the 4th time the Lakers legend, who died in 2020, has been on the cover of the game. According to a statement, the selection was made to honor Bryant's impact on basketball. Both versions of the game will be on sale later this year. All right, when you think of who to hire for a wedding, you might think of a photographer, a caterer, makeup artist. How about a content creator? Well, in the age of social media, some couples are doing just that to make sure the posts on their big day are just right. Well, we have a wedding content duo with us this morning. Jayla Henry joins us on Zoom, along with content creator Alexis Springfield, who's here with me in New York on set. Good morning to both of you. Jayla, I want to start with you. Congratulations. You and your husband, Tony, you just had a big vow renewal after you weren't able to really have the wedding you wanted. How did you come up with the idea to hire a content creator for your big day?
Like you said, it is the age of social media. I'm an influencer myself. So I had seen, this trend going around, like, you should hire a content creator for your wedding. I was like, maybe I should do that. Big moments are very special to me, especially to share with my followers. So I went ahead and said, you know what? Let's bite the bullet and hire a content creator.
All right. So, Alexa, help us understand, what is it you are actually doing as the content creator? Are you using your phone? What is it you're capturing? What is it you're looking to do here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always tell my brides to call me their own personal paparazzi, because that's essentially what I am. From the start of your wedding day all the way until the end, we make sure that we're capturing every single moment, every detail that you can imagine, from bridal get ready moments to first looks, walking down the ceremony, all the way up to the end of your night while you're dancing the night away. I do use my iPhone. I do a stabilizer with my iPhone, and I'm capturing moments throughout the entire night with that.
Are you posting throughout the night, or are you collecting, curating, and then putting it out there in like a beautiful way, like a day or two later? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. So we start off with taking behind-the-scene photos and videos throughout the night, but we also offer live social media takeovers as well, where we can either post from your personal social media account, or we can create a custom wedding page for you to post for your guests or family to follow along who may not attend the wedding, or guests that just want to see behind the scenes as well.
A live wedding takeover. I love it. All right, so Jayla, we hear Alexa helped recreate the viral moment when you actually met your husband. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I met my husband at a tailgate. Basically, long story short, told him he was going to be my husband that day, and thankfully we got a picture of that moment. Hiring a content creator, best decision ever, because as we were taking, official wedding photos, she's like, oh, you guys need to do when you first met. Totally slipped my mind, so much to do with the wedding day. So without her, we probably wouldn't have gotten that second picture of us finally fulfilling, him being my husband at our wedding day.
That is so cool. I love to see that. So, Alexa, there's probably folks watching this right now who are like, your job sounds cool. I want to do that. Do you have any tips for breaking into the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So my biggest tip would be to reach out to family and friends. Ask to shoot content for free. Make those videos, put them together, and then send them over and post them on your social media. Once you start to post on your social media, you'll end up getting traction, and eventually you'll gain some clientele.
So, Jayla, I mean, you are an influencer. I guess I'm asking, for people, whether you are an influencer or you're not, what do you think is the biggest benefit of having a creator for your big day?
I'm going to cry now. So I got all the moments back instantly the next day. So, wedding videos, you normally have to wait about a month. And to see those moments just at the palm of my hands, authentic, and knowing that I didn't have to do anything to curate them was the best thing ever. Influencer or not, I absolutely think you should hire a content creator. It was the best decision of the entire wedding, honestly.
We only have 30 seconds here, but Jayla, were there any moments that were captured that maybe a photographer or videographer wouldn't have captured, or maybe wouldn't have captured in the same way?
I had a Beyonce moment where Alexa literally ran and captured me dancing to my favorite Beyonce song, and she captured it in no other way that a videographer or photographer could have done.
All right, you can't miss those Beyonce moments. Jayla, Alexa, thank you both. Fascinating look at this. We appreciate you taking some time to speak with us on this Friday morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Finally this hour, women of color make up fewer than 1% of pilots, but history is being made in the friendly skies. NBC's Yamiche Alcindor has more on an effort to encourage more black women to be a part of the next generation of flight.
Jada Williamson's always dreamed of sitting in the cockpit and calling the shots.
What I like about flying is you get to see different things you've never seen.
But that dream of a career in aviation is a rare one for black girls to accomplish, with fewer than 1% of pilots women of color.
It was tough, I won't lie, because there was no one that looked like me.
Now Captain Teresa Claiborne is part of a group of trailblazing black women pilots hoping to increase those numbers.
We believe if they see it, they can be it.
She was the first black female pilot in the U.S. Air Force and is president of Sisters of the Skies. She is now a United Airlines pilot.
Why do you think more black women aren't becoming pilots? It's extremely expensive. I mean, it takes upwards of $100,000 to get your licensing to fly. So if our young ladies are not seeing it, if their parents don't have the funding for it, then it's not going to happen.
Sisters of the Skies provide scholarships, mentorships.
So that's going to give you your up and down.
And interactive events like this one in Colorado.
So here, let me put it on this way.
I liked flying in planes, and I really wanted to learn how to. And then I just kept watching videos like Top Gun, and I learned about a lot of things about flying, so I wanted to try it.
I love the planes and I love the electronics. It was really cool because I never met a pilot before ever in my life.
Madeline Starr was part of the program. Now she is paying it forward, a mentor herself and a pilot for United Airlines, just like her mentor, Captain Claiborne.
That was really helpful to know that I wasn't alone. One of the young girls walked up to me and she was like, "You're the first girl pilot I've ever seen." It's something that's going to stick with them.
What's your advice for a Black woman who might watch this, who says, I want to be a pilot, but I'm nervous and scared?
Do it. I was nervous. I was scared. They can do it. And we're there to help them do it.
Yanisha Sendor, NBC News, Washington.
Love to see those pilots paying it forward. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now, but stay with us. The news continues right now. Good Friday morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is on assignment. Right now on Morning News Now, heat of the moment. Those sky-high temperatures just aren't letting up for millions of Americans, with yet another dangerous triple-digit day expected for many out west. Well, at the nation's big airports, frustration is mounting as travelers face even more delays at the gate stemming from the long holiday weekend. We're covering it all, plus your weekend forecast, which includes some strong storms across the middle part of the country. New information this morning surrounding that White House cocaine mystery. What we now know about where exactly that bag was found inside the West Wing and the latest on the investigation. One step forward in the treatment of Alzheimer's, the FDA putting its stamp of approval on a landmark drug meant to actually slow the progression of the disease rather than simply treating its symptoms. More on how it works, the potential drawbacks, and what it could cost the average patient. And of course, if it's Friday, you know we've got your can't miss list on deck. It is your weekly rundown of what's hot in the world of entertainment. And this morning, none other than Taylor Swift returning with her version of her 2010 classic, Speak Now. We begin with the sweltering heat that is baking cities across the globe. That heat is record-breaking. Not only have we seen the hottest week on record, yesterday we just recorded what could have been the hottest day on Earth. The planet's average temperature spiked to 63 degrees. Stateside heat alerts are in effect for parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. The Northeast is also dealing with above-average highs in the 90s. And a new study out of the UK that was released yesterday shows triple-digit temperatures can have a dangerous and potentially deadly effect. Symptoms of heat stress you should watch out for include nausea, dizziness, headaches, and fainting. As temperatures climb, frustration is also spiking at our nation's airports, with travelers facing more flight delays as they return home from those 4th of July vacations. NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa has more on all this.
Hey there. Well, a record 43 million people got behind the wheel for the July 4th holiday, and now many of those travelers will begin making their way home from the holiday. Fortunately, you can see behind me, roads are moving smoothly at this point, all while a sweltering heat continues to hover over parts of the country. In some cities in the Northeast, they will see temperatures up to 13 degrees above average, adding to a week of weather woes.
This morning, the summer scorch continues.
We are just breaking records left and right here.
The high temps so far possibly responsible for at least 3 deaths this week, and dangerous for those braving the heat. Border Patrol overnight releasing this video showing a rescue of 2 hikers in Arizona suffering from heat stress several days ago.
He's unresponsive. It's going to be 2 patients.
Oppressive temps beginning to ease in the Northeast after record-setting heat baked residents in New York.
It is crazy out here.
Even putting bathers at the beach at risk.
They don't want to have anything to eat or drink, so 4 or 5 hours later, they come into the first aid stations to be treated because they're dehydrated.
The scorching sun also created prime conditions this week for ground-level ozone when pollutants chemically react in the sunlight. A growing list of cities recorded their worst air quality ever this summer.
Anybody who is outside doing physical activity can experience more coughing, more irritation, but it's especially dangerous for people who are already predisposed to asthma, to heart problems, to lung problems.
Though cancellations may have gotten better, many returning from July 4th vacations still face frustration at major airports. On Thursday, 1 in 5 departing flights delayed at Houston and Denver airports. At New York's JFK, 1 in 10 flights delayed. Just another reason to pack your patience as the summer season heats up.
And some good news on the travel front. Despite a record number of people getting on the road for the July 4th holiday, gas prices have actually been improving. The national average for a gallon of gas sits at $3.53 today. That's a 2-cent improvement compared to last month and more than $1 cheaper from last year. Back to you.
All right, Emily, we'll take every cent we can get. Let's get to some severe weather. Meteorologist Angie Lastman is back with the latest on the forecast. Angie, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. We've got some more storms that we'll watch develop potentially into the afternoon hours today, but we've already seen quite an active morning so far. We had some severe thunderstorm watches go into effect for parts of the plains, and that's really the area that we're going to closely watch through the next day or so here for the strongest storms to develop. Here's what we're looking at right now. Some heavy rain working towards Omaha. We have some of that heavy rain also extending in portions of Oklahoma right now. Looking at the system as it moves through the next couple of days, this is going to be where we center most of those, the best chance for some of those storms. The greatest risk is going to come from Colorado to Oklahoma for the later parts of your day today. But then we start to see that shift a little farther to the east as we get into tomorrow. It'll still include the high plains, but we'll also see that system moving and making its way east and then eventually impacting folks even as far east as the mid-Atlantic by the end of the weekend. So here's what we're looking at for the severe weather today. Places from Denver, it's extending into Amarillo and Oklahoma City, could see that large hail. We're talking up to 2 inches in diameter, as well as those strong winds up to 75 miles per hour. And not to mention the potential for a couple of these isolated tornadoes to pop up into the afternoon and even potentially evening hours. Here's where we'll go for tomorrow, though. This extends a little farther east, as I mentioned, now including places like Little Rock and as far east as Nashville could see some of those stronger storms. Does include 11 million people with those same hazards. Now, by the time we get to Sunday, wrapping up our weekend, if you have outdoor plans and you live anywhere from Jackson through Atlanta and up towards Washington, D.C., you could see some of these thunderstorms developing and becoming dangerous at times. We'll see those same hazards. 46 million people will be at risk for this. And we'll have on top of that some heavy rain. We could see localized amounts anywhere from 1 to 3 inches, but upwards of 4 inches in some spots. And that, again, same kind of area, Oklahoma City, Little Rock, Birmingham, and then parts of New England and the Northeast. So something to watch there. Otherwise, it's going to stay hot and humid for parts of the Southwest. We'll see those triple digits once again today and potentially tie a record in places like Tucson and El Paso. And over the next couple of days, not much relief for folks there. That goes for folks in the Northeast, too. Will stay above average in some spots, ending up feeling like 95 degrees when we're at the warmest point of our day today in Washington, D.C. So prepare for that. Meanwhile, a little farther to the south, temperatures feeling a whole lot warmer. 107 for what it'll feel like in Jacksonville this afternoon, Joe. AC cranked up all the way.
And incredibly humid. That Phoenix really stands out, like 112, 112, yep. 112.
Time for a vacation,
My
maybe.
goodness.
I don't know.
Not
north.
to Phoenix. Canada.
Well, out of Phoenix and
exactly.
somewhere
else. All right, Angie, thanks so much. We've got new developments in the investigation at the White House after a small bag of cocaine was found inside the West Wing. NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell has the latest.
Good morning. We have more specific information now about where the small packet of cocaine was found, and it's near a well-traveled and highly secure part of the West Wing. The big question remains, can the investigation determine who brought the illegal substance into the White House? A new turn in the White House cocaine mystery, a more precise location of where the drug was found. This is the secure ground entrance on West Executive Avenue, often used by the president, senior officials, staff, and some visitors. Sources familiar with the investigation say the small plastic baggie of cocaine was found in a storage cubby just past those doors on Sunday night, a short distance from the tightly secured Situation Room.
Where this was discovered is a heavily traveled area where many White House, West Wing, I should be even more specific, West Wing visitors come through this particular area.
Catching the culprit, now considered unlikely. Officials say some forensic testing has been done, and the sample remains at a federal lab for additional efforts to find evidence. But sources familiar with the probe bluntly said after days of work, they do not expect to have enough to identify the individual. And by Monday, the investigation could be wrapped up. The White House has emphasized that tours are common and occurred 3 straight days before the cocaine was found Sunday night.
They happened on Friday, they happened on Saturday, and Sunday.
Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton sent the Secret Service director a letter demanding answers and asking How often has the Secret Service encountered illegal drugs at the White House complex? Sources say the Secret Service has no record of illegal drugs being found at the White House in recent memory. We expect to learn more about the forensic test results and the extent of the sophisticated testing investigators are using over the next few days. Lawmakers are also asking broader questions about screening procedures, taking this incident beyond finding one individual to scrutiny of the bigger picture of White House security protocols.
All right, Kelly O'Donnell, thank you. The medical community is hopeful this morning after the FDA approved a new drug that could potentially slow down the advancement of early-stage Alzheimer's disease. It's called Leqembi, and trial research suggests it could be up to 27% effective within the first 18 months. Let's bring in NBC News senior medical correspondent Dr. John Torres for more on this. So first of all, let's go over the basics. What do we know about Leqembi? Who qualifies? We should also talk about these risks, which some doctors are quite concerned about.
So Leqembi is also lecanemab. That's a scientific name. That MAB at the end, MAB, is monoclonal antibody. So it's a monoclonal antibody, much like you can think of during the pandemic where you're using it to boost your immune system to treat COVID. Here it's boosting your immune system to treat Alzheimer's, and it's attacking the plaques, which we know they're the plaques in the brain that we know contribute towards Alzheimer's, and it gets rid of those. But in the past, just getting rid of them didn't seem to do much as far as cognition. This one, like you mentioned, has that 27% decrease in the decrease of cognition loss over the next 18 months. So essentially it's giving people about a 5-month spread of not having Alzheimer's, of improving their Alzheimer's, or not improving it, but not making it worse. So what we do know is that there are ways you have to take this. It's an IV therapy. You have to take every 2 weeks. You have to go in there. It's probably going to take a couple hours. For some, that could be a bit cumbersome. We do know that there are some side effects. Brain swelling and brain bleeding were the biggest side effects. 14% of people in the trials had serious side effects in the original trials, and so there is some concern there. And experts are going back and forth. Some are saying the improvements are modest, which might not be good enough for this medicine to work as well as we'd like it to. Families, on the other hand, are saying, hey, we'll take anything at this point. We have nothing. Please give us this.
No surprise, it's expensive. The drug right now costs more than $26,000 a year. Most of that cost covered by Medicare and other large insurance companies, but who's actually going to be covered for that?
So Medicare has 3 different requirements. Number 1, you have to be on Medicare. That's the biggest requirement. Number 2, you have to have moderate cognition loss. And so it has to be moderate Alzheimer's, which means you have to get tested. So you also have to have those plaques. So you have to have MRIs. You might have to have subsequent MRIs and some testing as well to find out where your cognition is. And then number 3, your doctor has to register you in a registry so they can follow the progression and see how the drug's doing over time. CMS, who runs Medicare, is very adamant about making sure that doctors understand it's easy to get on that registry, because some doctors might be hesitant because of cumbersome issues in the past. And so, you want to make sure that the doctor understands that.
So if you're thinking of this drug for yourself or for a loved one, what are the big questions you should be asking your doctor right now about the benefits, about the risks as you weigh all of that?
And that's essentially it. What are the risks at this point? And again, that brain swelling and brain bleeding, most of those were asymptomatic, meaning they didn't show any symptoms and they improved over time. But for some, it wasn't. There were some deaths in the trial as well that were attributed to this medication. So ask about that. Ask about the benefits. Will it help my particular family member who we're talking about? And do I need to be tested at this point to find out if I qualify in that category of that moderate decline of my cognition? And also talk to them if they're hesitant and say, hey, from what I understand, it's easy to get on that registry. Can we look at getting on that registry so we can go ahead and qualify for it?
Is this an important step toward finding a cure?
It is. It's a very important step, because right now the fact that we're seeing this progression of medications, and each medication seems to be doing better and better, particularly as far as that cognition decline, which is all important. Hopefully we get to the point where we get that cognition stopped, possibly even reversed, and we get that holy grail, which is the cure for Alzheimer's. Keeping our fingers crossed.
All right, Dr. John Torres, thanks so much. Good to see you in New York this week.
You bet.
Russian state media is taking aim at the leader of the mercenary Wagner group, which carried out that aborted rebellion against Moscow last month. There's an apparent campaign to discredit Yevgeny Prigozhin, which involved airing unverified footage of a police raid on his home in St. Petersburg. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons has the latest from Belarus.
Hey there, good day to you. This is one of the military bases in Belarus, where it's been reported Yevgeny Prigozhin's Wagner fighters would be redeployed. But once again with Russia, things seem to have turned upside down. Take a look through the fencing there. You can see makeshift military tents But the Belarus authorities have brought us here to try to show us there's no Wagner and no Prigozhin. This morning, the mercenary leader, whose mutiny, according to President Putin, came close to causing a civil war in Russia, is apparently back in Russia. Russian state television, which once lauded Yevgeny Prigozhin and his Wagner fighters as frontline heroes in Ukraine, now branding him a traitor, detailing his criminal past and airing video that's said to show his privileged children partying. The images, including these unverified photos from a police raid at his St. Petersburg home, show a life of luxury, fake passports and a collection of wigs. The apparent drive to discredit him comes as Belarus, which had initially offered him exile, is now distancing itself. These images, released by the Associated Press, appear to show a camp being built at a former military base here. The suggestion the camp would be used to house Prigozhin's Wagner fighters. This morning, we drove to the former base. NBC News joining a small number of news organizations shown around. There are no Wagner here. Wagner could come here, the General Major from the Ministry of Defense told me, but they are not here now. It seems like the plans keep changing. You're US military, he says. Our strength is to act in a changing environment. These empty tents, they insist, are for local forces. There are enough of these makeshift wooden beds for 5,000 troops, Belarus officials tell us, but Wagner may never be here. Belarus's autocratic leader, an ally of President Putin, telling us Prigozhin is now a free man and in Russia.
And all is forgiven, is that what we're saying?
Putin told us directly about that. His money, his belongings, and so on were returned to him, and his weapons, I think. I know this is the case. Everything was returned to him.
But since the mutiny, President Putin has avoided even saying Prigozhin's name. Long term, the two men in the same country might be an uncomfortable compromise. President Lukashenko told us that on the day of the mutiny, he says there were 7 Russian military planes here in Belarus ready to transport troops to Moscow to defend that city. Those plans changed, he says, and now they appear to have changed again. What does that tell us for President Putin? The implications of that day are still unresolved.
Keir Simmons in Belarus, thank you. It is a dining debate that has truly stood the test of time. How much should you tip when you order takeout? Well, this now viral confrontation involving a delivery driver in Texas is putting the spotlight back on gratuity. But first, the company behind that tragic submersible loss now says it is suspending operations. We've got the latest on that and the latest on the ongoing investigation next. We're back with a look at a missing persons mystery in Texas. Last week in Houston, a man was found alive. He allegedly went missing more than 8 years ago, but police now say he was never really missing at all. He'd actually been living at home with his mother this whole time. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson joins us now from Houston with the latest. Priscilla, good morning.
Joe, good morning. There are growing questions about that alleged disappearance after that Texas teen surfaced 8 years after he was reported missing. This morning, neighbors and family members are outraged, asking how and why authorities were misled for so long. This morning, family members of the man believed to be missing for 8 years, speaking out after discovering he was apparently living at home all along.
He didn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that.
Just days after a Good Samaritan reportedly found 25-year-old Rudy Farias unresponsive outside a local church, police in Houston making a shocking revelation.
Investigators followed up on many tips, leads, collected evidence proving that Rudy was not missing during the 8-year period.
According to authorities, he never actually vanished and was living with his mother, Janie Santana, the entire time.
It was discovered that Rudy returned home the following day on March 8th, 2015.
Santana allegedly telling people who saw Farias that he was her nephew.
The mother, Janie, continued to deceive police by remaining adamant that Rudy was still missing.
Santana even releasing a statement after her son was found, thanking the media and the public for their support, writing, "My son Rudy is receiving the care he needs to overcome his trauma." Neighbors and family members in disbelief.
It's just not right.
A woman identifying herself as Faria's aunt saying he's traumatized and, quote, he doesn't want to see his mom. Also speaking to our Houston affiliate KPRC.
I fear for Rudy Faria's life.
Investigators say Farias and his mom had several encounters with police over the years, but gave fake names and birthdays, which is why he remained a missing person case. For now, there are no clues why the mother and son would have lied all these years. But police say they do not believe this was a kidnapping case, and no charges have been filed against the mother or the son.
Rudy's safe. He is with his mother by choice.
And he's an adult?
Yeah. He's a 25-year-old man.
A solved missing persons case that now has more questions than answers. And police say this investigation is still ongoing. Once completed, they say it's possible Janie Santana could face charges for providing false information in a police report. And NBC News has reached out to Santana for comment, but did not hear back. Joe?
All right, Priscilla, thank you so much. Now to the latest on the Titan submersible tragedy. OceanGate has announced it is suspending operations following last month's implosion in the Atlantic Ocean. This comes amid growing scrutiny over the sub's construction. NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson joins us with the very latest. Ann, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. The search for OceanGate's Titan submersible and the 5 people aboard captivated the world. Now, with investigations going on into what may have caused that implosion, the company's very future is in question.
Titan topside, you are out at 130 meters.
Nearly 3 weeks after the Titan submersible began its ill-fated dive to the Titanic shipwreck, this morning the company that operated the vessel says it has suspended all exploration and commercial operations. Beyond Titanic, OceanGate had plans to take paying passengers aboard Titan to explore the Bahamas and Portugal's Azores archipelago next year. But now, last month's dive, which led to the death of 5 people, including the company's CEO, Stockton Rush, may be its last. The announcement comes amid international investigations and increased scrutiny of possible warning signs that may have been ignored.
I've broken some rules to make this.
In a BBC documentary filmed last year, Rush did not appear concerned when he was told about a noise heard on a past dive.
On mission 4, when we got to the surface, Scott was piloting. He heard a really loud bang. Almost every deep diving sub makes a noise at some point.
The U.S. Coast Guard and the Transportation Safety Board of Canada are both examining debris found on the seafloor, including a voyage data recorder. U.S. investigators are currently analyzing what they believe are human remains recovered within the wreckage, all to determine what may have caused the deep-sea catastrophe. Experts have been critical of the different materials used in Titan's construction. In particular, 2 titanium end caps joined by a carbon fiber hull. Video posted in 2017 shows the OceanGate team bonding the pieces together with a type of glue.
The glue is very thick, so it's not like Elmer's glue. It's like peanut butter.
Meanwhile, members of the deep-sea exploration community, including film director James Cameron, have speculated even before Titan's crew lost communication that Rush may have attempted to abort the dive and resurface.
I believe now that they had some warning, that they heard some acoustic signature of the hull beginning to delaminate.
But of course, right now, exactly what happened inside that vessel is still a very big mystery. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada says it will take them weeks to review the information they've received from both interviews and the vessel's data recorder, and they may still need even more time to gather information. So it looks like it's going to be a while before we get the true answers. But we should also mention that we reached out to OceanGate for further comment, but we did not get any response, Joe.
All right, Ann, thank you so much. Coming up, it is a veritable twit for tat, with Meta's new Twitter toppler Threads making big waves in the social media world. So what's with all the hype, and what are its users saying about it? We're going to take a closer look next. We're back with international headlines and a tragedy in Italy. Several people are dead after a fire at a retirement home. NBC News foreign correspondent Claudio Lavanga is in Rome with that and other world headlines. Claudio, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. Well, at least 6 people are now dead and dozens others were injured in that fire that took place here in Italy in the northern city of Milan. Now, the fire was initially put out quickly after smoke filled the first floor room, but the toxic fumes were still able to spread throughout the building. Local firefighters were able to evacuate about 80 residents, some in wheelchairs, while taking another estimated 80 to the hospital for inhaling smoke. Firefighters are investigating the cause of the fire, but suggested it was likely accidental. Now to China, which has announced it will ramp up the inspections of food imported from Japan. The government stated the increased scrutiny is for safety reasons after officials in Japan approved a plan to release radioactive water from the Fukushima plant into the sea. The rigorous examinations will focus mainly on certificates for aquatic food and product imports. China is Japan's largest buyer of seafood exports and had voiced disagreements with the plan to discharge radioactive water from the plant. Finally, the Netherlands plan to return hundreds of treasures it took from Indonesia and Sri Lanka throughout its period of colonialism. The items returning to their rightful homes include a gem-encrusted cannon from the 18th century and a collection of precious jewels, gold and silver. The Netherlands has recently been publicly addressing its role in colonization and the slave trade and are willing to return any culturally significant items taken from former Dutch colonies. The country hopes that the return of this prized object can begin a period of intense cooperation with Indonesia and Sri Lanka, Joe.
All right, Claudio, thank you so much. If you were online at all yesterday, then you probably saw millions of users responding to the new Threads app. The platform is Meta's response to Twitter, which has seen some major changes under the leadership of Elon Musk. And the Threads launch seems to have been successful, with more than 30 million users signing up within hours of its launch. NBC News youth and internet culture reporter Callan Rosenblatt joins us now to tell us just what people are threading. So, Callan, good morning. How are folks reacting to the app this morning? I mean, can we say it's a hit among users, or is it too early to tell?
Good morning, Joe. People are really excited about Threads. They are loving it. It's been really easy to access because you already port your followers over and you're following over. So effectively, you know where your community is. People are likening this to the first day of school. It's really exciting to get to see all your friends sort of cash in on jokes and memes. People are saying this is another thing to add to their social media diet, which is already pretty heavy with Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok. There's a lot to follow, but people are really, really excited about this particular platform. And as you said, millions of people signed up, especially because it's so easy to just import that pre-existing profile from Instagram into Threads. It's been a hit so far.
My favorite part of the first day of school was seeing people in person. So anyway, what were some of the biggest complaints that users had when they signed up?
There's a few things. So the app is still pretty new. What it's missing right now is direct messaging. So you can't just DM someone. You'd have to reply publicly if you want to talk to them. The other thing that it's missing right now is a search function. So if you saw a really funny thread and you wanted to go find it, rather than searching the terms, you have to remember who threaded it, and go find them. But so those are two functions that are missing. And another complaint that I'm hearing, something that my good friend Morgan Sung pointed out, is that, your persona on certain platforms is very different. And the way you act among your Instagram followers may be different than you act among your Twitter followers. So now when you're on Threads, it's not just your friends, but your aunts, your uncles, your high school teachers. And you kind of have to moderate your personality a little bit more for that particular audience. So those are the things that people are thinking about right now as the app progresses.
You talked about the social media diet and how much we're getting right now. I mean, is this something people were actually looking for right now for their social media?
I think people are looking for something to sort of be either Twitter replacement or Twitter adjacent. As you mentioned, Twitter has had a lot of chaotic changes since Elon Musk's takeover, and things have really changed on the platform. People have been looking for something to sort of supplement Twitter in their social media diet, and for a while that was Mastodon, then it was Blue Sky. But the love for those platforms has cooled a little bit as those things have not, been fully taking over for Twitter. They're not really perfect clones. This feels really close. But Joe, the one thing that we will know is time. Time will tell whether this is actually going to, be the quote unquote Twitter killer, as some people are calling it.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, what I was going to ask. Big picture here, Threads has become the most rapidly downloaded app in history since its launch. I mean, does it actually have the potential to end Twitter, or could it do a lot of damage to Twitter?
Absolutely. I mean, this has the potential for a lot of people to replace Twitter. Of course, there are people who will never leave Twitter. People, have built followings there. There are people who are so really happy there, of course. But this has the potential to replace that app in a lot of people's social media diet. It's going to continue to increase in its functionality. New features will be released. This is still in its very early phases. But, it's an exciting platform. It's one where people, rather than having to totally build a following from the ground up, are able to sort of import their friends and followings. And it's kind of been a little bit of an easier jump than starting from scratch. So I think this has a lot of potential, but I still always wait. I want to see what happens, how this plays out. And people are saying, I can't believe I'm excited for an app that comes from Meta, who has had a few issues in the past two. It's like between Twitter and between a Meta product, people are like not 100% sure where they want to go, but they're still really optimistic about where this platform could take them.
All right. Hopefully a less toxic option than Twitter is right now. Callan, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
If you have not bought a ticket for tomorrow's Powerball drawing, you might want to reconsider. That's because the jackpot, it's now $590 million and growing. The estimated lump sum payout is projected to be about $304 million. There have been 33 drawings since the last Powerball was hit. That was back on April 19th. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch joins us from Chicago, where the excitement is ramping up. Jesse, people are scrambling to get their tickets ahead of the drawing. So let's talk stats. Where does this drawing rank?
Yeah, this is pretty close to being one of the top 10 jackpots in Powerball history, Joe. And it's about time we have a winner because, as you mentioned, we haven't seen a Mega Millions or a Powerball jackpot winner since April. That's far too long, in my opinion. Take a look at what we're dealing with right now. Mega Millions is at $427 million for the jackpot. That draws tonight. And then Powerball, if you want to go even bigger, wait till tomorrow night. $590 million up for grabs in the Powerball, Joe. And all you need are two of these guys right here. That's all it takes.
So those were the stats. Let's talk about like the more creative stuff, your imagination. What are the things you can do with $590 million or the payout, a mere $300 million?
Yeah, our team's been crunching the very important numbers. So if you want to maximize your winnings, you need to wait. You need to be patient. You need to take the money out over time. And it comes to you over about 30 years. So if you're taking that full $590 million, and that's just an estimate, you might even get more than that. So if you take all of that money, the odds of winning are not that great. However, you could purchase, ready for this, more than 400 homes in Maui. That sounds pretty good. You could get more than 15,000 pickup trucks if you like to drive a lot of places. We were joking, maybe you could try to figure out a way to build a bridge to Maui with all of those pickup trucks. Or if for the coffee lovers out there, how about more than 100 million venti caramel macchiatos? I don't have that kind of money yet, Joe. I'm feeling optimistic. For now, we're going with the generic coffee.
I'm just trying to imagine 124 million of those cups in your hand right now. So, Jesse, we have to remember, no matter...
It's a frightening thing.
Exactly. More caffeinated Jesse. So we have to remember, no matter what the jackpot is, the odds of winning are always the same. Remind us what those odds are, and if you happen to beat those odds, if you happen to win, what are the tips you should do if you win?
Yeah, they're pretty not great, Joe. We're talking about less than 1 in 292 million. We're talking really low odds. You're about 250 times more likely to be struck by lightning, according to numbers from the National Weather Service, and that's in a given year. You're also nearly 80 times more likely to be bitten by a shark, according to the Florida Museum. I'd rather just win the lottery than either of those things happen, so I'll play the long odds. If you do happen to have the luck and you pull off a win with one of the lotteries this week, and a couple tips to keep in mind. You're going to want a financial and legal advisor because you're talking about some big life changes coming. If the state where you're playing allows you, you're going to want to stay anonymous to protect your privacy. And another thing you can do to protect your privacy would be to change your phone number. So all of those are things I hope I have to do in just a couple of days from now, Joe.
All right, Jesse Kirsch with a little Curb Your Enthusiasm reference there. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Coming up, tension over tipping, a now viral confrontation between a delivery driver and a Texas homeowner. It's rekindling an age-old debate over how much you should be tipping when eating out or even ordering in. But first, a fresh look at the state of the economy this morning with some breaking employment numbers out just moments ago. We're going to break down those numbers after the break. We're back with breaking economic data. The U.S. economy added 209,000 jobs in June, which was actually less than expected. Meantime, the unemployment rate cooled slightly to 3.6%. Here to make sense of all this is NBC News business and data reporter Bryant Chung. So, Brian, typically it seems we've been beating expectations. Not this time. Help us break down the numbers. How do they compare with May, and where are we seeing the most gains and losses?
Yeah, good morning, Joe. Not this time did we beat estimates, but it's still a positive number and shows that the jobs market is continuing to chug along and adding payroll gains for a lot of Americans. So as you mentioned, 209,000, that's how many jobs were added in the month of June. And that is indeed a slower pace than the 339,000 that we saw in the month of May. The government actually revised down that number as well. So even that May number wasn't as hot as we thought. But look, the unemployment rate is still very low, 3.6%. And for context, 3.5% and 3.4% were essentially the lowest that we've seen in over 50 years. So the labor market still looks very good, and unemployment remains very low. Now, the next natural question is, where did we see the jobs gained in the month of June? If we take a look at the sector-by-sector breakdown, you can see that in leisure and hospitality, I'll write this down here, we added 21,000 jobs just in the month, so bars and restaurants continuing to hire at a very healthy rate. And then we also saw professional and business services. There's more white-collar jobs inside the cubicles, perhaps adding about 21,000 jobs in the month as well. So maybe in the tech sector, for example, where you might see some of those jobs, the bleeding perhaps stop. But I want to point out, not all good retail trade. These are jobs at the mall contracting, interestingly, in the month by about 11,000 jobs, showing how there could be some weaknesses in this labor market. Although, again, overall, Joe, good to see that there's that positive number in terms of the amount of jobs added in the month of June.
Exactly. So one of the big questions now is the Federal Reserve meeting at the end of the month. They've been trying to strike this balance, cool the economy, but not go into a recession. So what could this report mean for plans to raise the interest rates or not raise interest rates?
Yeah, again, the Federal Reserve, which has been raising interest rates, they're the reason for why your mortgage rates, your car loan rates have gone up so high. But even though they're looking at the jobs numbers and going, okay, well, that's a good thing that unemployment remains low, this is the figure, Joe, that they're going to want to be looking at very closely. Average hourly earnings growth. How much more are people making this year compared to last year? In May to May of last year was 4.3%. This new jobs report told us that wages rose by 4.4%. Now, that's probably a good thing if you're looking at your paycheck and saying, okay, well, my boss is giving me a little bit more money, but consider that inflation is still really high. So again, it's not necessarily the case that your wages are keeping up with inflation, which is the reason why the Fed is likely to continue to raise interest rates to get these two things back into balance.
So bottom line, what does all this mean for everyday Americans who are managing their bills, trying to pay their budgets?
Yeah, well, what it means is that, again, inflation does remain high. You probably still have your job, although it depends on maybe what industry you're in. But for the Federal Reserve, again, interest rates are going to remain high. Don't expect to see mortgage rates come back down to 3% anytime soon. It's still going to be very, very expensive, Joe, to borrow.
All right, Brian Chung breaking it down for us. Thanks so much. More financial headlines now. After revving up in the beginning of the year, electric vehicle sales seem to be coming to a yellow light. CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us again with more money news. Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning. I see what you did there with all the car stuff. All right, let's get you some information here. Sales of electric vehicles jumped 50% in the first half of the year, but the pace of growth has slowed, and that's due to a buildup of unsold inventory. A report by Motor Intelligence shows automakers sold nearly 560,000 electric vehicles, with the growth rate outpacing that of conventional cars. Sales of gas-powered vehicles grew about 10%, but the rate of EV sales was down from a year ago when they grew 71% amid a rise in gas prices and the launch of new models. Volkswagen will start testing its self-driving electric vans on public roads for the first time this month in Austin, Texas. VW says the program will begin with 2 vehicles and expand to a fleet of 10 ID Buzz vans by the end of the year. At least 4 more cities will be added ahead of a planned commercial launch in Austin by 2026. And Volkswagen says it has no plans to develop a dedicated ride-hailing or sharing service right now. And the new head of NBC Universal is shaking up the executive ranks. Comcast president Mike Cavanaugh is now taking the CEO job full-time. He's promoting Donna Langley to run NBC Universal's entertainment division, including all film and TV content. Mark Lazarus is now chairman of television and streaming, overseeing ad sales, NBC's TV networks, NBC Sports, and Peacock. Comcast is the parent company of NBC Universal and NBC News.
Certainly some big news here yesterday. All right, Silvana, thanks so much. A viral video of a tense encounter between a DoorDash delivery person and a Texas homeowner posted on TikTok is making its way around the internet, and it's reigniting the debate over tipping. Take a look.
I just want to say it's a nice house for a $5 tip.
You're welcome.
A DoorDash spokesperson confirmed that a worker was removed from the platform in connection with this incident, saying in part, quote, respectfully asking for a tip is acceptable, but abusing or harassing someone is never acceptable. Help sort all this out, let's bring in etiquette expert Thomas P. Farley, also known as Mr. Manners. Good to have you with us, Thomas. So let's first talk about just this video in question. His manners were probably not on point. Does he have a point? I mean, in your view, $5 tip, $20 pizza delivery, is that appropriate?
It's a pretty nice tip for a $20 pizza. Now, there's a lot we don't know here, of course. We don't know how far he had to drive. We do know that gig economy workers pay for their own gas. They have no benefits. So many of them do feel resentful about tips that are unnecessarily low or sometimes not at all. In this particular case, $5 on a $20 pizza, you're really talking about a 25% tip. Seems pretty generous to me. But for a pizza delivery, typically, you do not, no matter how much the pizza costs, no less than $3 to $5, even if it was, say, a $10 pizza. But at $20, $5 tip is perfectly fine. I think this driver behaved really badly.
All right, let's look beyond this specific incident. You and I chatted around the holidays last year about this trend where so many tip jars are being put out, or you're being asked on kiosks to tip people. And sometimes you're like, wait, am I supposed to tip here? And if so, how much? So help us understand, when is it okay to actually skip the tip?
That's right, Joe. So this trend, it's known as tipflation, where suddenly everywhere we go, we seem to see these screens. And it started off in coffee shops. Now we're hearing about point of service experiences like a mechanic or someone packaging your order on Amazon. So the general guideline here is if you are experiencing a service, so a haircut, a massage, a nail salon appointment, for all of these experiences, of course, you tip typically at 20%. For service in a sit-down restaurant where you've got a server coming to you and delivering your food to you, taking your order and bringing you your food. Again, that amount, 15%, that's kind of gone the way of the dinosaur. Now we're looking at about 20%. The national average is just under 20% for tipping in a full-service sit-down restaurant. For these point-of-purchase transactions, I'm buying a bag of potato chips and someone's scanning a barcode, you may see a tipping option at the screen. Just because you see that tipping does not mean that you're obligated to do so, but a lot of consumers are feeling they must. This is called guilt tipping, and consumers are rightly feeling confused and very imposed on.
Let's talk about the situations when a tip is appropriate. You talked about in a restaurant. It used to be 15% for standard sit-down dining. That's what it was when I was a waiter back in the day. Seems that's changed, but I know sometimes, you know, you get the little credit card machine from them and it might say 20, 25, 30%. What is the right amount here?
Sure. So in a sit-down restaurant, very often what you might experience now is the technology allows the server to bring the point-of-purchase card reader right to the table, and you're putting in the card and tapping the amount right in front of the server standing there, as opposed to writing an amount, closing a folder, and walking away. So once again, even restaurant patrons are feeling this is known as tip creep. So back in the 1950s, 10% was about what you would tip for service in a sit-down restaurant. As you say, growing up, probably it was 15% for you. That 15% is now considered very much on the low end, and 20% is not you being a super generous person. 20% is you tipping just about the norm. If someone's delivered extremely wonderful service, they've gone above and beyond, you really want to be thinking about that 25 or even 30% for a sit-down experience. And the same in a coffee shop or an establishment where you've really gotten terrific service. They know your name, they know your order. But typically, if this is just someone scanning a barcode, these employees are making a minimum wage that has nothing to do with the tip. And you, again, are under no obligation to tip as a consumer customer.
Such useful advice as always. Thomas Farley, Mr. Manners, thanks so much for joining us on this Friday. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
Coming up, it is yet another moment that Swifties have been waiting for. Taylor's version of her 2010 smash hit record, Speak Now. It is finally out this morning with some brand new tracks and, of course, big name features. We've got more on that and the rest of your can't miss list on this Friday after this. Welcome back. An unlikely controversy has broken out over the upcoming Barbie movie. Vietnam said it would ban the film starring Margot Robbie. It's all over a map shown in the movie, supposed to guide Barbie when she goes into the real world, but that map appears to reflect China's claim to almost all of the South China Sea, known as the 9-Dash Line. Vietnam and other countries contest that claim. Warner Brothers Studios defended the Barbie Land map, calling it, quote, a whimsical childlike crayon drawing, which was not intended to make any kind of statement. It's Friday, which means it's time for your can't miss list. All the movies, shows, and music you cannot miss this weekend. USA Today's Entertain This host, Ralphie Aversa, is here to help guide us through all this. Good to have you with us. I mean, let's start with this all-female cast. Ensemble, funny, little raunchy, heartfelt message, Joyride. I've seen a lot of promotions for this one.
Yeah, this one, I mean, if you like, The Hangover, if you like Girls Trip, if you like Bridesmaids, you're going to love this one. Ashley Park stars in it. She plays Audrey, who heads over to Asia to find her biological mother. She makes the trip with her best friend, a translator, and the translator's awkward cousin. This one is hilarious, and we gave it 3.5 out of 4 stars, so I think a lot of people are going to enjoy seeing Joyride in theaters this weekend.
And it has Stephanie Hsu, who got an Oscar nomination this year, too, right?
Yes.
Which is awesome.
Yes.
All right. When it comes out, that comes out, Tuesday. Mission Impossible. It depends on where you live, right? Some places get it Monday, yes, some people get Tuesday, but for sure by Wednesday you can go see the new Mission Impossible movie. It's part 1 of Dead Reckoning. It is, people are loving this, right?
Yes, yeah, a lot of death-defying stunts. Tom Cruise, you know him. He goes big. He doesn't go home, and that's certainly the case with this latest installment, the 7th Mission Impossible with Mr. Cruise, as you mentioned, part 1, Dead Reckoning. And his big foe in this one, by the way, isn't so much a human, but rather artificial intelligence. Yeah, AI once again. This time, thankfully, fictional. Let's hope it stays that way. But yeah, as you mentioned, it's going to be in New York and LA on Monday. Everywhere else on Tuesday.
Tom Cruise versus ChatGPT. But it is interesting because, I mean, like, we've seen some movies underperform recently, but Tom Cruise is really the one who saved the box office last year with Top Gun. I think a lot of folks are hoping he's going to do that again this time around.
Yeah, and people, whether it's movies or television or music, people love familiarity. Tom Cruise, obviously, familiar. Mission Impossible, familiar. So anticipating that this one will do well. We gave it 3 out of 4 stars, by the way.
All right. It is going to rain a lot this weekend in some places or be incredibly hot. So you might want to stay in and stream on Peacock, which is owned by our parent company, NBC Universal. They're celebrating Kevin Hart's birthday. He's got a show and he's got a special, a stand-up special, right?
Yeah. Well, so we'll talk about the special first. It's called Reality Check. And oh, my goodness, I watched a clip on his Instagram last night. I was in tears, and I don't think I'll ever look at a Denny's Grand Slam breakfast the same way either. Very NSFW. That's not safe for work, kids, but so funny. Kevin Hart, again, the special is called Reality Check. And then, as you mentioned as well, season 3 of his talk show, Heart to Heart, where he sits down with some big names, including that one right there, Will Smith. This is so interesting to me because, Kevin Hart has a relationship with Chris Rock. Now, I know some people are saying it was over a year ago, let it go, let's move on, but I'd have to think in some way, shape, or form it comes up in their conversation. You see J. Cole there as well, Mark Cuban, Will Ferrell. There's so many, Sofia Vergara, a lot of big names. Again, season 3 of this, also streaming on Peacock this weekend.
All right, another thing streaming, the action film Call Her King. I guess it pulls no punches with its political message.
Yeah, Naturi Naughton stars in this one. Maybe you remember her from 3LW. I loved her and stars in his hit show Power. Nonetheless, she plays a judge who has to end a standoff in her court. This one's streaming on BET+. Really good stuff. Love Naturi. Looking forward to watching this one.
And finally, we've been teasing it all hour long. Swifties are waking up. They get Taylor's version of Speak Now, the re-record. There's some bonuses in here. What can you tell us?
I mean, do you think they're waking up, or do you think, Joe, that they've been up since midnight when it dropped? I'm going to go probably with the latter. Of course, it was Taylor's 3rd album, and she's about halfway through re-recording all of her earlier catalog so that she owns the masters. In addition to the original track listing, we have 6 new From the Vault tracks. One about Emma Stone, apparently, When Emma Falls in Love. That's a highlight for sure. She also enlisted Fall Out Boy for a song and Hayley Williams of Paramore. She'll tour with Paramore, by the way, overseas in Europe as well on the European leg of her Eras tour.
It's interesting. I have no idea how she has time to do all this. She's doing this tour. She's re-releasing these songs. She's making all this new music. She really is unreal.
You know what's really unreal? Thinking back to Speak Now, she released that in 2010. She wrote the the whole album by herself while she was on tour.
Yeah.
She really is an incredible artist.
All right, Ralphie Aversa, thank you so much. So
Thanks,
much
Joe.
to do this weekend. We appreciate it. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. Stay with us, though. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.